Hey guys, today I'm going to do a very basic texture tutorial and we're going to paint bricks today. So something very simple, very basic, but has a lot of texture. And I'm going to be using my Holbein 18 color watercolor set today. Hopefully you guys will be able to check out the review for that soon. So if you're painting buildings, bricks come up fairly often, and I'm going to demonstrate a few easy techniques for doing that. And I don't necessarily do a lot of architectural painting. I do a lot of comic painting, and in that comic there is a cute little pink brick house, so I paint a lot of bricks. And I'm just grabbing a red and a brown to mix together. And I've currently got a little synthetic flat. So one of the first ways you can do this is simply letting your flat do most of the work. You want to keep in mind that when bricks are laid, they're laid in kind of an alternating pattern with mortar in between, so that white area there in between your individual bricks. You can either freehand them like I did here, or you can sketch them in like I do in Cara. And you can work wet into wet or wet over dry. So I'm going to demonstrate a little wet into wet, adding some darker red, some darker brown here and there, and allowing the water on the paper to sort of diffuse that color, and that way we get kind of a mottled effect. You can also use that as an opportunity to maybe mix in other colors, maybe add in some shadow. So I'm grabbing some darker brown and some purple. And I'm just sort of dabbing it in like so. But as you guys can see, that's just a very simple and quick to do brick texture. Next, I'm going to create a brick wall, sort of building on what I just showed you guys. So I'm mixing a couple different browns together. And I'm going to basically create an area of wash to begin with. And I'll even sort of rough up the edges so it looks a little more believable. And I'm going to give that a chance to dry. So while this is wet, but it's not like full force wet, I'm going to grab a little more brown and I'm going to start blocking in some of my brick shapes wet into wet. So I'm getting kind of a diffused look. And this would be really good for like a stone wall, which I can show you guys next. Grab some more of that dark brown, work it in down there. And these bricks up here are drying, so I'll get back to these in a little bit. So I'm going to grab a different flat. This is actually probably more of a little filbert. And I'm going to grab some more of that red, mix it up again. And it's still a little bit wet, but I'm just going to sort of noodle in a little mottled texture. Since bricks have uneven surface textures, different parts of the brick will catch the light. You can use a round for this. You can use a ratty, tattered brush for this. You don't have to use a flat if it's not what you're comfortable with using. You can also add some of your initial color back in and blend certain areas out a little bit if you want to. Then going back over here to our kind of stone wall thing. Just using that flat to sort of reinforce some of those bricks. Now it's a little more uniform, a little more straight edge than I would necessarily want. But it'll work for this demonstration. And then, while it's still wet, I'm going to grab some black and I'm going to grab some violet and mix those in. I was hoping that would be saturated enough, but just dab it in and let it diffuse. And I think leaving your bricks sort of half painted like this really works best. It feels more natural. I feel like if you over render things like this, then a lot of what makes it work gets kind of lost. So, you know, you could leave it like that, or you could be like me and just always overwork everything all the time. And I'm gonna go back over here and just add a little bit of dark brown here and there to those slightly cleaner bricks. Okay, so I've kind of shown you guys how to do some more straight edged bricks. What if you guys wanted to do some stones? Something a little more organic, a little more free flowing. So I'm gonna grab some purple. I'm gonna grab some blue. I'm going to grab a little bit of black. I'm trying to make kind of a gray, maybe even a little bit of brown. Throw all the colors in there, right? And I'm going to water that down a bit. And we'll just create kind of an organic shape like this. And I'll adjust the camera a little bit better. Start kind of roughing in your stone shapes, wet into wet if you want. And they should nestle, but they shouldn't be too perfect. And give that a chance to dry. So the paper is still damp, but it's less damp, so I think we can continue to work on our stones. And one of my tips for that is make sure they're not all the same color, because obviously there would be natural variations, and not all the same shape. So I'm working with a black and purple as a base, but I'm going to mix in other colors to sort of build the stone wall. And there's different types of masonry. There's dry stone walls, and then there's also stone walls that have like mortar in between the stones. And if that's something that's relevant either to your story or to what you're trying to paint, then it's definitely worth looking into and depicting. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm kind of just freehanding. And this can also be used for like a stone path or like stones around a fountain or around a pool, or even for certain types of concrete that happen to have large, very visible stones left in, like cobblestones, for example. And I'm working quickly and wetting to wet so that I can get some color play. But I think it gives you guys the general idea. Then if you're smarter than me, you will have reserved something, some color or something to shade them with. Just gonna go in here, wet into wet, and dabble in a little bit of black. And then you could have either started with some masking fluid at the beginning and reserved areas of white for the highlight. You can go in with like like Pro White or gouache or Copic Opaque White, some white, and just sort of pick some white highlights up out of that. And the same goes for any of these. Now, up here is still super damp. Use the same shadowy brown I kind of mixed for the cobblestones, and I'll just add a little bit of shadow to these. Heck, I'll even do it on these as well. Getting a little bit of dry brush I think is good because it really helps give kind of a lively appearance, and it also makes that sort of stone speckle look more apparent. So I have here some bleed-proof white, and I'm just going to use this to add some highlights back. I should say, I would be remiss if I didn't, that traditional hardcore watercolorists often see it as cheating if you don't just utilize the white of your paper. And it certainly is nice when I am that good, but I'm often not that good. So I often will just dab on a little bit of white gouache or Copic Opaque White just to add some of those highlights back in, especially since in general I tend to do really detailed work. This can be a really great way to add whites back to the eyes, or to make a line pop a little bit better. And then on the stones, you want your highlights to kind of reflect the shape of what they're highlighting, basically. So we're going to do curved highlights. All right, and we're all done. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this texture tutorial, this texture in focus with bricks, rocks, stones, anything like that. I've got a few more of these little quick tutorials coming up, so I hope you guys will look forward to them. And if you're looking for more watercolor tutorials, you can find more here on this channel or over at nattosoup.blogspot.com in my Watercolor Basics series. So have a great day, guys. It was great hanging out with you. Bye!